Baptist Church, First Missionary Baptist Church, the Alpha Epsilon Sigma chapter of Phi Beta Sigma Incorporated from the Phoenix area, Kappa Sigma Sigma chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and the Southside Community Association. Can't leave us out. And all of us came together to develop a series of town halls that would help people understand the Black lived experience in Flagstaff. We're doing this under the umbrella of the Southside Community Association, and we operate the historic Murdoch Community Center. And the Murdoch Community Center sits on the site of the segregated school, the site where the segregated school for Black kids stood from about 1924 until about 1952, 2 years before Brown versus Board of Education. And so we think it's important for people to know that, because it tells us a little bit about our history as a community, that we have never, it appears that we've not ever stepped back from controversial issues. We segregated our schools 2 years before Brown versus Board of Education, when the rest of the country followed along soon after that. I'm sorry, after that court decision. And so this is a partnership with Flagstaff City government, and they have graciously provided some funding to allow us to do this. And so this is the fourth in the series of town halls. We have 2 more. We are going to have some social distancing focus groups at the Murdoch Center. Those will be going up soon on Eventbrite, and you will need to register for those, because we do have to be careful with the social distancing. And so more information, just stay tuned to the Murdoch Center Facebook page, and you'll find a lot more information. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our host, Ms. Bernadine Lewis. Thank you.
I think our host, Sister House, is there anything that I need to do?
I'm happy to launch right into our policy brief on this.
Please, thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you again. Just to echo what Ms. Deb said, thank you to everyone who is joining us this evening. We're excited to have this conversation with you all about the state of the Black economy of Flagstaff. We're talking about economic inclusion and impact tonight. And our issue statement for this subject is: we recognize the historic and ongoing contributions of Black entrepreneurs, business owners, and other economic drivers to the development and continued advancement of Flagstaff. Yet we also recognize that the voices of Black leaders are underrepresented in the local business sector, employment advancement opportunities, and economic development discourse. We believe in the need for sustainable initiatives focused on both historic and current African American service providers and leadership development in order to ensure Black economic and employment parity and sustain the continuous economic growth of Flagstaff with equity. So, to provide a little bit of background on this issue, one thing that we are accepting that we've seen nationwide is that a central tenet of all community development is the access to and development of business and economic capital. Flagstaff, as we all know, and is stated in the mission of our local Chamber of Commerce, is a city of both corporate and small independent businesses. And we have long focused on the ongoing development of a vibrant economy where business is viewed as a catalyst for community and economic development. So much of the recent national conversation has focused on the importance of supporting Black business and Black economics. And in a recent Business Insider's article, it was noted that supporting Black business means seeing Black business owners and Black citizens in general as equals and experts in and not assuming our skills, services, and creations are less than, which has been the common narrative when discussing supporting Black ideas, creativity, and business. One thing that we have noticed as we've gone into this conversation is that it's very typical of most communities to have the presence of businesses and economic drivers that reflect the various diverse populaces they serve. In typical cities, you'll see businesses that are reflective of Black culture, of Hispanic and Latino culture, of Asian culture, of all the different cultural groups that make up that community. However, in Flagstaff, there is a noted lack of that sort of brick and mortar representation. It's typical in a community that is recognizing and celebrating Black contributions to that community. You'll see institutions such as barbershops, hair salons, restaurants, and other economic establishments that both serve and celebrate the culture and provide the means for the economic sustainment of both the Black community and the broader community in recognizing that important economic impact. Flagstaff has historically had a number of Black brick and mortar establishments. And one really important thing that I took from a lot of the reading and background information that I looked at for the subject was how those businesses provided not only a sense of cultural celebration, but also a sense of cultural refuge. You had centers like the historic Elk Club, where Black travelers could seek not only lodging, but also the best places where they could shop, the places where they would be safe while they were traveling. You had resources like the Green Book that provided lists of restaurants, hotels, and other economic drivers that would provide support and safety for Black members of a community as they pass through a town. Today, there are only 2 brick and mortar representations of Black business within Flagstaff. There is a co-op market, and there's also the Cuts Barber Shop in town. What we are getting into in this discussion then is just focusing on the fact that culture is central to community development. Without representation of culture in a community, it suggests that something is missing. And today what we're going to be discussing is what that missing piece is for Flagstaff, why there are not more of those businesses here, why there may be difficulty for some who are seeking business opportunity, and what might be standing in their path, what prevents Black-focused businesses from coming into Flagstaff, and if they do come, what would prevent them from staying, and all of those different things that point to the importance of culture, representation, and economic parity, all as part of the development of a community such as Flagstaff. So thank you all for your attention and time. I look forward to diving into this conversation with you. And with that, we are actually going to lead right into our discussion. We won't be doing breakout rooms, obviously, because there are not as many of us this evening, but we will have a few facilitators who will take us through 7 key questions that will dive into this topic. So I will turn it over to Mr. Melvin Hall and Ricky Young and Justice, if you guys are on and able to come back with us.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate the policy brief, Ms. House, and definitely sheds light on the city of Flagstaff, the Black community, and and the state of the economic affairs of then and now. So diving directly into our questions and conversation, we really want to now take a look at what do we feel are the primary concerns facing the Black community of Flagstaff in economic development. And we'd really love to hear from some of the participants on the call. If Ms. Whelan, if you're available, definitely would love to hear your insight onto what you feel are some of the primary concerns of economic development and empowerment for the citizens of color Flagstaff. Okay. Do we have a call still?
Does she know she's muted?
I apologize. I can't see who's on the.
Yeah, Councilmember Whelan, you had your telephone, I think, as your audio, and that is muted for us still if you were speaking.
I'm asking to unmute, but I have not received a response.
Okay. Well, and while we're working that out, how about Mr. Page? Are you on the call? If so, what do you feel are the primary concerns facing the Black community of Flagstaff when it comes to economic development?
That's a very good question. I am on the call. Good afternoon, everyone. That's a very good question. It could all come down to numbers. I mean, it's just not enough Black people out here. That is something that that I can initially think of why we don't have the representation of businesses out there, just because of the majority of Black people are college students are here playing football, are here playing basketball, and there's just not that many, at least not that I know of, that is still around here in Flagstaff. And I think that might be one of the reasons why we have that issue in regards to not having enough Black businesses. It's something that needs to be addressed. I mean, we can see the evolution. We can see that where we are in this society, where the Black or the social injustices labeled toward us is prevalent, and it can be very prevalent up here. In fact, and I'm opening up this can of worms by saying what I'm going to say, is the election, the upcoming election, and I feel a certain way about how the current administration is doing what they're doing, and it's just not in favor that I am. But near where I live, I saw the sign of this current administration and vote for this person. I just got offended when I saw that sign. It was just something that that I just did not think it should be up in this public area, and like it was. And just so happened that the next day it was down, it was gone. So I guess I wasn't the only one that got offended, but the fact that there are people in the society that feel a certain way, that have the same mindset of our current administration, and they want to keep that oppression down for some of our people. It's just troubling, and that might lead to why we're seeing what we're seeing in regards to the lack of Black businesses here in Flag.
Okay, thank you so very much for your comment there. And next, I'd like to get the insight from Mr. Austin Aslan, if I pronounced your name correctly. Definitely feel you could lend some perspective to this conversation. What are your thoughts on how we can improve the economic development and the Black business ownership in the city of Flagstaff?
Well, thank you, Brother Hall. I will say, first and foremost, I'm very much here to listen because I have a knowledge gap in this area. And so it is my pleasure to sort of step back and be a good listener today. But I will also tell you that everything I know on this subject, I've learned personally from Mayor Cora Evans herself. And it's been a wonderful mentorship that she's provided me. You know, a couple of things I can think of right off the bat. It's just the cost of energy in town. Hits folks, you know, in the Sunnyside and Southside neighborhoods a little bit harder than it does elsewhere. And some of those structural changes that need to happen in order to get homes weatherized and more energy efficient are much more difficult in certain areas, and it's disproportionately so. Another thing too, you know, going back to just the Rio de Flag project that we're all working very hard to complete. These have enormous economic impacts for Flagstaff's Black community, which is geographically located a little bit differently than other demographics in town. So those are a couple things I can think of right away. And again, it's really my aim tonight to be a good listener and to learn more on the subject from a variety of perspectives.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in here, Brother Hall, if that's okay. I've been a crafter in Flagstaff for over 25 years. I'm a seamstress. And several years ago, I went looking for maybe a space to, thinking about opening up a little shop. My specialty is dresses, little girls' dresses. And I did find a place, you know, and those of you who live in Flagstaff are familiar. It's a little house right across the street from Macy's, which I thought would be a perfect location. And when I contacted the owner and spoke with him about a lease and all of that, it was just way over anything that I could even afford at the time. Even looking at getting a small business loan, I probably would have ended up having to have to put my house up as collateral because I didn't have, you know, any other collateral. So I think some mechanism to help small business owners or small business entrepreneurs, people that want to go into business and not, you know, out of their home. It would, you know, it would be good to have, like in larger cities, they have like a Black economic development place or somewhere like that where you can go and they can assist you with, you know, how do you get loans? How do you, you know, start it up? You know, how do you do a business plan? All of that. And I know that some of those classes are offered, but I think that African Americans and African American Black people generally have a little bit harder way to go when they're trying to start up a business because people still are a little suspect about, you know, them in general. So I think that having some kind of a focus on trying to help people who may not be viewed as well as some other people in the business industry. And, you know, and I'm an excellent seamstress. I didn't always say that, but I say it now because I've had enough people, you know, really marvel about my work. So I know the quality of my goods would be outstanding, but still trying to get, you know, that space so that you can show off what you can do. So I just think that some other programs that would be aimed at the Black community. And then I'll say one more thing and then I'll let it go. I have a friend who is an excellent cook, and she cooks for a lot of different, you know, people. When we're having events or activities, we'll ask her to, you know, cook this and then we'll buy it from her. But she would be an excellent restaurant owner. But again, you know, it's just hard to get started.
Thank you, Ms. Deb. You know, that kind of, I have a background in radio and television, and in radio, you're always looking for the perfect segue to move from one topic to the next. And your story there, sharing your story of, you know, wanting to open up a business and not being able to find the proper financial means to do that, and then having a friend who's an excellent cook and would make an excellent potential restaurant owner goes right into our second question, because we've learned there are only 2 Black businesses right now in Flagstaff. So the question is for the current mayor, Evans, you know, what is being done, or what are some options for economic development and opportunities for programs like Ms. Deb had mentioned, for people that want to get in business and have the desire, but not necessarily the financial means?
So I just want to make sure that we also know that there are actually more than just 2 Black businesses. There's just 2 brick and mortar Black businesses, right? I know I just left a funeral, and for example, Elijah Smith was DJing there. So he's a DJ, his business is just mobile, and he happens to be Black. Now, in the city of Flagstaff, there are different organizations that do work in the realm of economic development. You know, the city of Flagstaff, we do some work in economic development, mostly retention, and some work in retraining. There is also ECONA, and they do, it's the Economic Collaborative of Northern Arizona. They do economic development at a regional scale, and they're usually working with the big employers. We do have the Small Business Development Center that works with people to help them start their business through Coconino Community College. The City of Flagstaff is in partnership with NACET, which is Northern Arizona Center for Emerging Technologies, now known as Moonshot. So they are available, and they do a lot of incubation at a in a medical, scientific, that type of level. And then the other place that Ms. House spoke about was the Market of Dreams, which is a micro entrepreneurship center that is over in Sunnyside. And that particular incubator focuses on people who are living in poverty, focuses on people who typically work 2 jobs, but we believe, and I say we, the Sunnyside Neighborhood Association, feels that the best way out of generational poverty is through small business ownership. So those are some of the things that are available. What I think is problematic, because you guys also know that I own a business as well, Destiny's Creations. And I want to echo really what Ms. Debs said about being able to access a brick and mortar and being able to actually being able to sell your product. I do think that, you know, the African-American population, the Black population here in Flagstaff has the same issues that we see a lot of our indigenous people have when it comes to having to sell their products on consignment or for a percentage. So for example, I did have my cards that I make in a business downtown, but it was a 50% consignment, right? I currently have some of my product in another location. It's a 40% consignment, right? So I get 60 cents on the dollar. There is a artist co-op in the mall that my product is in, and that one is actually, I think, more reasonable because it's 20% consignment. The Market of Dreams, which was very successful in helping people who were living in poverty start their own business, you know, so we worked with, and I'll go into that a little bit more, but there was a flat rate of $45 a month. And then you had wraparound services. And I really think that wraparound services are what Black businesses need here in town to be successful. So by that, I mean, you know, we would help someone get a business license, help somebody go all the way, the processing, the permitting process with the county in order to legally sell food. We have 2 or 3 certified kitchens now that people can work out of. I mean, trying to find a certified kitchen and having to pay the rent on a certified kitchen just to do a startup is absolutely extra. It's just so costly. You know, making sure that people understand the permitting process. There's a program at the county where if you attend the workshops and you save money, they will match. It's like an EDA, it's a special account Well, say you save up $1,000, they'll match you with $2,000 to help start your business. I think the issue with that is that the workshops are held on, at least they were before COVID, on Wednesday at 6 o'clock in the evening for 2 hours. And that doesn't necessarily fit into everyone's lifestyle, especially when you have people that are mostly working 2 jobs. And so there's barriers in making sure that people have the access, that it's presented in a way, quite frankly, that they understand it, and it's done in a way that it's accessible. At least in my mind, it's accessible to the people who would like to start the business or are doing the business activities in order to move forward. I think you all have heard Jabbar Nichols' story when it came to his barbershop, and the fact that he actually had to, I think, take the test 8 times in order to be able to expand to be a college, right? And so it was really, he didn't have anyone necessarily mentoring him through that application process. And it's also the welcoming that people feel when they go to try to get these services. I can tell you that I myself have walked into certain places. I don't know everything about business, but I do run a business incubator. I have gone to other places in town to try to recruit the assistance and the help, and I wouldn't necessarily think it was there. And so those are just some of my experiences as a business owner, as someone who runs a micro entrepreneurship center. And I do also think there is a thought sometimes that because of the business it is, that it's either not a legitimate business or it is not, I guess I'd have to say it's not treated as a legitimate business, right? You know, it's like, for example, Elijah Smith has been doing DJing, I think, for the past 15, 16 years. That's a legitimate business. You know, pays taxes and everything else like that. But because of the type of business it is, maybe it's not, it doesn't seem to be legitimate. I think that there's issues with that as well. So.
Thank you, Mayor Evans. We appreciate that. It definitely lends a perspective to, you know, not only the resources that are out there, but also the resources that need to be there. So thank you very much for that. Now, next,
I'm sorry, and one more thing before, then I'll be back to being quiet. You know, something else too, for example, with the Market of Dreams, it is attracting, so the Market of Dreams is funded by grants, because we don't take a percentage and because it's a flat fee, and then you provide the wraparound services. What we have noticed is that there is a perception that poor people don't know how to run a business or can't run a business, or, you know, maybe it is better for them to get a second job. And, you know, like I said, our mindset is rather than get a second job where you have to be gone away from home, your second job could be your business. And there are numerous studies that show when kids are engaged in an entrepreneurship activity with their parents, they go on to become entrepreneurs. There's also studies that talk about Silicon Valley, and how Silicon Valley was not always the richest city in the world. But what happened was you had micro entrepreneurs that had ideas. The community wrapped themselves around those people and helped their ideas grow. And then what happened is when those people were successful, they stayed where they grew up. They stayed where they had support. So then when the PTO needed money for something, they had people there. When the Little League team needed new jerseys, there was a business there that was able to contribute with it. When people needed jobs, there was jobs there. So there is there are numerous studies and there are numerous understanding about the concept of entrepreneurship, not even directly as it relates to business, or not exclusively as it relates to business, but how it relates to a community and what it means to be a community of entrepreneurs with different ideas and different thoughts and things like that. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. All right, next we'd like to get the comment from Vicki Finger. If you're on the call, we definitely like to get your thoughts and feedback on what Black businesses are you aware of within Flagstaff, and what are your experiences been?
So I am here to listen, definitely too. I am a learner. I know about the Market of Dreams, and I've been to a couple of the Sunnyside Association meetings a while ago, but I'm not aware really of Black businesses except the Market of Dreams. And actually I was doing canvassing, I don't remember what year it was, and in Sunnyside, and walked into a barbershop, Black barbershop in Sunnyside, and it was a wonderful experience. We had a really good conversations, and I sat down, and we had a really good conversation. So those are the only two businesses that I've been aware of. But one of the things that came to my mind was someone mentioned in terms of the number of Black businesses, Black community, the size of the Black community. And I wondered whether the receptiveness of the community kept that number down, or is it some other factor that keeps the size of the community down? So that's a question that came to my mind as I was listening.
Great question, and it definitely lends to the conversation. And next, really, Ms. Deb, want to put you back on the spot if you don't mind. What can you lead or add to answer that question? And also, being a longtime resident of the city of Flagstaff, where did the Black businesses go, and where do you see the economic development trending towards, or what can be done to collectively have a larger financial and economic impact, like the Market of Dreams is attempting to do?
Well, let me just take a minute to just think about that. In terms of where the Black businesses went, those that were here years ago, even before I got here, I think people moved away. Parents got older, didn't want to run whatever business they had, or they passed away, and the small business, kind of went with them. And so that's kind of what has happened to, I think, the businesses that were here like years ago. I think in terms of, I think that Black people spend a lot of money on a lot of different things. And it would be nice to spend some of that money in the community that you are a part of. And so it would be nice to be able to go and get my hair done at a beauty parlor. It would be nice, where I don't have to kind of walk them through what it is that I need for them to do, where I would have some choices in the kind of hair styles that I, wear. Right now I'm wearing my hair natural, and there's nobody here who can do anything to my hair other than me. And so it would be nice to maybe, be able to spend my money there, since I'm going to get it done anyway. It would be nice to give it to that business. I also think that community-wise, people don't know where to go to get help or get support or to get assistance with starting their own business. And some of it is that maybe the business that they want to start is not really a business that they can make a living here in Flagstaff. Perfect example is that my son, when he graduated from NAU, he stayed here for about a year. And then he ended up in LA because he's a videographer. And so there's not a lot of work here for him, you know. He'll come home and do a little bit here and a little thing there, mostly, you know, to see me, and then get some work done while he's here. But there's not a large enough industry for him to freelance. So some of it is just Flagstaff, but then some of it is that it can't really support the type of business that some people might want to do. So those are just some thoughts.
Thank you so very much for that. Now I want to throw Mr. Aslan back on the hot seat, if he doesn't mind, because, you know, Ms. Deb, you mentioned some of the types of businesses you would like to see. And now, you know, Mr. Aslan, you know, what are some steps that we can take in the Black community in Flagstaff to attract some of these businesses and to provide some of these services?
Thank you. Well, you know, I don't know the answer to that question, but I do have some questions. One thing that's on my mind is just, you know, how much of this is a problem about Black businesses, and how much of it is a problem about business generation and entrepreneurship in general in Flagstaff? And I do think it is okay to sort of focus in on our Black community and make sure that those who want to be successful in starting a business should feel the support that they need to have. And so, you know, just directly asking that question, what does that look like? And how are we encouraging not only, you know, Black people to remain in Flagstaff, but encouraging a migration maybe of other Black people into Flagstaff, so they see a vibrant community here, one in which success is possible and they want to be a part of that. And just providing those resources, those microloans and those grants, and you know, the banking assistance that is required, and the training. And also, you know, maybe we can do things on a bigger level too with, you know, we like to talk a lot about bringing some, not big business to Flagstaff, but, you know, like heavy hitters to Flagstaff, biomedical, other sorts of high tech stuff, and making sure that when we are trying to attract those types of job creators into the region, that we are doing what we can to make sure that we are including Black CEOs and other you know, drivers of economic engines from Black communities elsewhere, and getting them to horizontally relocate here, and just kind of facilitating that process deliberately, instead of letting it happen organically, in which case we're mostly just going to get a lot of more of the same old types of things that we see. And what I like about that too is, you know, if this was writ large, it would be helping to further facilitate, you know, the sort of problem that we see in our Fortune 500 companies, where I don't know what the numbers of Black CEOs are, but I know that white men tend to prevail as CEOs in these different sectors. And just doing things, you know, we're so innovative in Flagstaff around sustainability and climate and water conservation and things like that. Wouldn't it be neat to see if we could really pursue some strategies to pressure the outside business community to diversify itself more as well, and then invite those folks into town?
I'm just going to jump back in here for a minute. I think that, you know, you've hit the nail on the head, in that I think we need to purposefully go out and look for some of those kinds of businesses. you know, granted, Flagstaff is a small community, and we might be focusing on more of the STEM kind of stuff, but I think that people need lots of other things other than those kinds of businesses. We have a huge tourist business here. In the summertime, I see more Black people in Flagstaff than I do during the winter, because people are coming through. They're taking their kids to the Grand Canyon. They're taking them to the Painted Desert. They're taking them, you know, to all the places. You know, I took my son to all those places too, you know, and so we want our kids to experience those kinds of things. And it would be nice when we came through Flagstaff that we could find, you know, a restaurant that cooked the kind of food that we might want to eat. It would be nice if we could shop at a place that might have some things that looked more ethnic, you know, that maybe I couldn't get in, you know, wherever it is I'm coming from. So I think that, you know, to purposefully have an arm of, whether that's the chamber or whoever, to do that, to purposely look for people who may want to relocate a small business to Flagstaff and encourage them to do that in some kind of way. I don't know what kind of incentives, because I'm not up on all of that, but there was a family who used to sell soul food out of a gas station over on, what street is that? Woodlands Boulevard. I think that was yeah. And I used to, you know, when I come home from NAU on my way home, it's like, I don't feel like cooking tonight, so I'm gonna stop in there and get my dinner, you know? And so it was nice, but they closed up and moved back to Phoenix. And so I don't know why, but I mean, it was always crowded. Everybody was always there. I'd always have to wait, you know, a little bit to, you know, to get my food, like I do at any other place. So, I mean, so they were doing a good business, but for whatever reason, they didn't stay. But it would have been nice, you know, had somebody maybe had a conversation with them about what would it take to keep you here. So just my little 2 cents.
And before we go to the next question, Mr. Hall, I did want to note that it looked like the mayor had a comment that she wanted to make, and then I saw Justice Daniels had his hand raised as well.
I just wanted to add to what Ms. Deb said. You know, I think part of, well, first of all, the majority of Black people that I grew up with left because of the cost of living here in this town. And the fact that they really got gentrified out, you know, once the work that they were kind of relegated to do, which was really attached to the sawmill, once the sawmills were closed and phased out, Black people in Flagstaff had not been given the opportunity to really be diversified in where they could work. So a lot of them left because of the cost of living here and being unable to find jobs. Something else too, though, that I wanted to speak to that had to do with what Ms. Deb said was when you come into Flagstaff, you wouldn't know that there is a Black community here. And I think that's part of Black people wanting to be here, Black people wanting to stay here, Black people wanting to invest here. You know, if you're walking to a grocery store, and I cannot tell you how many times someone has come running up to me, they have been like, hey, I've been in Flagstaff for a couple of days. You're the first Black person I've seen. Where do Black people go? Because there's not a central location where you can like go and find like, this is the Black part of town. This is Hispanic part of town. Because, you know, things have changed. And so people are more spread out and there's a smaller population. And when you look around Flagstaff, the only thing that really is noticeable that there's an African-American population anywhere in this town is a mural on the side of the Murdoch Community Center. So if you happen to go down Butler, you know that there was Black people somewhere around, but that's it. You know,
Don't
and
forget,
so,
Mayor, when you're doing your water pledge,
there you go.
You've got nice little posters up all over the place.
I forgot about that. So there's a poster of me somewhere. My bad. You know, one of the things I do think that we can do to assist with within tourism, within things that we do, is we have numerous places here in Flagstaff that were on the Green Book. And perhaps there's a way that we can highlight that as, hey, we were progressive back then. Some of these places are still standing. Maybe we should do some kind of historical tourism, something around those types of elements. So then that would bring out more of the African-American experience in a larger sense. But you're right, we do have the water pledge posters. That's a side joke with me and Councilmember Aslan, just so you guys know.
Thank you, Mayor Evans. Now, Justice, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to share my thoughts in terms of how do you promote Black business, specifically in Flagstaff. And I actually think that the model that you take in doing that is one that has three central pillars to it. I think that what that looks like, I believe it's diversification. I believe that it is diversification, it's unification, and it's visibility. And I think that those are the three pillars that you start with. And so, for example, as the mayor was saying, you come to Flagstaff and you don't immediately know that there is a Black presence in Flagstaff. That's an issue, right? And that gets into that visibility aspect. And so having some sort of front where you can show unification of a community is powerful, especially when it goes, when you start talking entrepreneurial spirit and the Black business in Flagstaff. And so what I think would be a great idea is if we had a nexus hub of a Flagstaff African-American community website of sorts, where you could access, you could see, because I think another issue is the fact that if you can't name, more than 3 Black businesses in Flagstaff and you're Black, that really highlights that visibility issue. I think if you had a hub where you could see all of the Black people, everything the Black people in Flagstaff had to offer from a business point of view, and almost have like an e-commerce online market, one, so you can diversify your income. So Mayor Evans could sell her product online, and you can bypass some of the intrinsic barriers to entry within the Flagstaff community of having a brick and mortar establishment. I think that you do that, you diversify how you can sell, you have a nexus point where people can find you too. And I think that also from an entrepreneurial standpoint gives the African-American community in Flagstaff a huge, it gives leverage in that sense. So I think that in terms of how do you beef up, so to speak, Black business in Flagstaff, I think you start there with those 3 pillars.
Thank you, Justice. And, if I can, I just would like to add, I'm, listening into what Justice and Ms. Deb and the mayor, when you're speaking about creating businesses for people of color there in the Flagstaff community, and not only that, but setting them up for long-term success and sustainability. Has there ever been any thought given to establishing a co-op where you have leaders from within the African-American community band together to open up a business or to back someone in their business just to spearhead that movement? So that's something that just came across my mind when we were thinking about this. And Ms. Deb has, or Sister Lewis or Cara, any of the long-term residents there in Flagstaff, has that ever been considered or something that's been done? And I know it's a little off topic, I apologize.
You know what, that's an excellent idea, a Black co-op. And to be honest, I know I haven't thought of it, but I think some of the concern that people may face, just like I did, is, finding a space that is affordable and finding, people who can sell things or who can provide something, out of that. I mean, it's a great idea. And I'll just leave it at that and leave it up to Bernadine to maybe go further.
I know if it were not for a Black co-op, Black supporters in southern Savannah, Georgia, not supporting me, I never would have become a business owner. The other thing too that I can recall is that how the city saw the need for Black businesses and really rallied together to support making that a reality. So as I'm sitting here listening, making that appeal to Akona about, and I wish that they were here to hear the importance of having full representation of all cultures, ethnicities here within in the city of Flagstaff. So to me, that's a beginning. Having this conversation with Akona, having this conversation with the Small Business Association, and then Ms. Deb, I'm recalling, and Mayor Coral, when we had the conversation a few months back about making the Murdoch a marketplace once a month, a great way to begin for those of us who have crafts, jewelry, clothing, whatever, to make, and that's the thing that was mentioned in our preservation and representation town hall about how the Murdoch has become whatever it is that we have needed it to be. And perhaps now the Murdoch can be a launching pad for Black businesses here in Flagstaff. I mean, we've done the jazz, the blues club, on a Saturday evening. I've been talking with Jerry Nichols, dubbing down with the blues. He's an excellent cook. And so we've been talking about, right before COVID hit, we were talking about doing Soul Food Sunday at the Murdoch every third Sunday. People can come by, get a dinner to go, or set it up where you can eat in the Murdoch or take your food to go. So I'm just sitting here listening that maybe we do need to circle back around and consider doing a Saturday market at the Murdoch, but also reaching out to Akona and the Small Business Association to get them, persuade them how important it is to become intentional about Black representation in the community of Flagstaff.
Thank you, Sister Lewis. Mayor Evans, did you have anything you wanted to add on that before I move on to the next topic?
Just that it's important when it comes to the concept of the co-op, right? Because the marketplace is a co-op. I think it'd be awesome to have the Murdoch Community Center be a launching pad for such a co-op, but you still have to have funding to have somebody to manage the volunteers and the co-op, right? That is something that we have found that has been very important. You have people who come into the co-op and they volunteer X amount of time to make sure that everything's running, but you still need to have the funding for the coordinator to make sure that it's being coordinated appropriately. And sometimes I think that we ask nonprofits to do things and we ask them to do things for free, and we ask the volunteers to do it the same way. And that's why projects don't get necessarily launched fully, and that's why they're not sustainable.
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
Mayor, I was just thinking about your idea around the green rooms. We also told me about the Buffalo Soldiers. And maybe this isn't a brand new idea, but definitely something that I'm feeling excited about. you remember this past year, the Discovery Flagstaff team initiated a walk the talk augmented reality thing that you can do on your smartphone, where you go to different signs around town and you can get stories about the moon, the history of the moon landing here in Flagstaff. I wonder if we could get Discovery Flagstaff to do something similar for these historic Black buildings and the stories that are hidden there.
That's a good idea. It's a new one.
Could I just say something? This is Vicki. One of the things that Justice brought up was a website dedicated to promoting, so I'm wondering if the hub has to be a brick and mortar, or if one other element of visibility is a website or something like that. So the hub maybe doesn't have to be brick and mortar, but it can be virtual. That thought just came to my mind. And real accessible, that would make it very accessible both for people who live here and people coming in, visitors.
I think one of the other things too is visibility. And I know, you know, I had some of my items over at the Market of Dreams for a while, and from time to time I still will take stuff, you know, there. I think the having the Murdoch Center be like a third Friday or a third Thursday or a third Saturday market is an excellent way for people to show off what they can do and what they have, you know, and then maybe from there they can venture out. I don't think we want to turn the Murdoch into another Market of Dreams. That's not what we're doing. But I think having that opportunity for people to shop some of the Black businesses that are here in Flagstaff, to maybe get a jump start, to make it, you know, at least visible, more visible, that there are Black businesses here in the area, and people do a lot of different things. So great ideas.
Thank you so very much for the thoughtful input and the feedback on that. It moves us on to our next. I apologize.
My fault. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Prince. So it brings us to a next question, you know, and just skipping one question out of order, but this question I really like to get Mr. Bunnell's, David's thoughts. You know, David, what do you feel needs to change in order to ensure continued positive development of the Flagstaff community when it comes to business and economic development for people of color?
I'm not sure about that specific question, but I think a lot has been brought up already. I was reminded of, I can give you one warning about grants that Coral might be familiar with. I was involved with the cake project, and I was I was so glad to hear that there are actual legal kitchens now, because that's what the cake project was about. And we had, it was like a CDBG grant, like $150,000 or something. And it was specific, there were specific things you could use the money for. And it was like, well, we need the money for this, and we have this stuff already, so we can't use the money for that. And the whole thing just sort of crashed and burned. And the whole point of it was to be able to create a legal kind of co-op kitchen with some folks who, there was a local restaurateur that, I forget his name, that was going to be involved to, you know, help people learn how to work in a kitchen. And very great aspirations for it, but be careful if you get grants that you read the fine print is the lesson from that. And I've been thinking, I love that Justice brought up about making sure that you diversify and make use of the internet stuff that I don't even know how to talk about, but but I know people that do that, that run their businesses primarily on the internet. And was also thinking that you can, one of the things that has come out of COVID is this new kind of community of Zoom meetings, kind of a similar thing, that people are getting used to meeting that way, and you can wind up having people from all over the country. So I've got a lot of little thoughts. Being able to bring in people from other places like Savannah, Georgia, for instance, that, you know, so we don't reinvent the wheel. What was it that worked there? And I'm certain there's a much larger Black community there than here, but, you know, there may be other places that are similar that could give us some ideas of things that might work. And I keep thinking there's this kind of chicken and the egg thing, you know, you need community to foster some of this economic development, but the economic development is what will foster the community. And what I really heard is if there is any way to create visibility, particularly if there are ways that don't involve having a permanent brick and mortar situation, things that, you know, murals or events. I love the idea of having building on that co-op thing. And I love that it was brought up both to focus on, you know, micro businesses, micro enterprises, and the big businesses, and looking at who those people have, you know, in their administration, or is there Black representation there? So that's kind of all over the place, and I don't know if that answered your question, but there's a lot of wonderful thinking here. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, David. Really, what I took away from it, and I think many in the group would, the opportunity for education. You know, it's quite evident that many in our communities aren't properly educated or know about the resources that are available to them, or how to access them and even implement them. So your comment drove definitely home the point of, you know, needing to educate the public and set up that means for the communities of color. Now, I have a question, and it says, our question number 6 was, what do you feel needs to change in order to ensure continued positive development of the Flagstaff community in the area of economic development for the communities of color? And Mayor Evans said that many people of color left Flagstaff because of the cost of living. My question is this: when the Brothers of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity here got involved with NAU and some of the young men, then we became aware of what they were paying to stay off campus, and the cost of living and how the rent structures are set up. With those being such heavy economic drivers and really inhibitors of entrepreneurship and starting your own business, what, if anything, is being explored there on a local level to drive down the cost of living so people can have disposable income to open up businesses? And that's open to anybody, because that was kind of like I threw that one in.
Well, go, Mayor Evans.
So, okay. I'll try to make sure that I maintain my my mayor hat. So first and foremost, the cost of living is driven by the market. The market is what drives the cost of living. The city of Flagstaff, here in the state of Arizona, rent control and those types of things that other states have are against the law. We do ask when people come for rezoning for affordable housing, but it's also against the law for us to demand affordable housing. So the 10% that we do manage to get when we rezone something is a courtesy of the developer. There's also a major issue in Flagstaff that I just want to speak to. And the major issue in Flagstaff is that each and every single time we have come forward with a affordable housing project on a piece of city-owned land, we run into a NIMBY issue. We run into people who have concerns about the sunflowers, who have concerns about rock croppings, who have concerns about view sheds and whatnot. And so there has never been, or there's a lack of a political will to move forward on most of those types of projects because of the NIMBY issue. And
Mayor Evans, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but for those who might not know, thank you.
Not in my backyard, not in my backyard issues. It's very interesting to me, and I will speak with myself as an individual, that our regional plan talks about sustainability. It talks about higher density. It talks about walkable and livable neighborhoods. But every single time a project comes forward in that particular vein, there are issues that our community experiences with it. I will tell you that in 1997, I purchased my house in Sunnyside. I purchased that house for $72,000. In 2003, 2005, it was reappraised at $250,000. Somehow between the late 90s and the mid 2000s, we had a lot of people move here, mostly from places like California, where they were able to sell their homes, come here and buy one and still live comfortably. That has just exasperated the cost of housing in this city. We are 6,000 housing units short, according to the last Econa study. 25% of our houses here in the city are second homes. No one lives in them the majority of the year. Another 25% is now estimated to be short-term rentals, short-term Airbnb type of situations. So in part, to answer the question, part of it has to do with the fact that the market is driven by the market. The price of housing is driven by the market. And unfortunately, people are willing to, because they work 2 and 3 jobs, to pay these high costs. Or the students that are coming here are getting student loans and that type of thing. But the other part of the equation that we as citizens here, and I'm speaking as somebody who's 3rd generation, and I have frustration with people who just moved in, yet don't want anything built, and talk about growth, but somehow they just moved here. And I also know there's people who've been here for 500 generations, right? So I'm new. But part of the issue that we have here in the city of Flagstaff are us, we are the people, ourselves. And the fact that we say we want affordable housing, but when it comes push to shove, we don't want affordable housing.
Yeah, I think that the mayor kind of hit the nail right on the head, you know, with that, because we deal with that issue in the Southside, because everybody wants to put all the student housing, all the high, you know, rise apartments or whatever, either in the north side or in Plaza Vea or maybe even in Sunnyside. I was talking with someone the other day and they were talking about a walkable neighborhood. And I was telling them, I said, well, you know what? Most people don't walk in Flagstaff. You know, most people don't walk. They ride bikes or they take public transportation. And pretty much the public transportation pretty much goes to a lot of places, even out to Fala, which is out near, going out towards Snowbowl, which is a place that we have thought about putting, the city has some land there, but of course, people yelled and screamed about the prairie dogs and misplacing them and not thinking about, you know, people living there. So part of it is us as a community. We need to get to the point where we're thinking about our neighbors, that we're really very community minded, and we're really not there yet. We say we are, but we're not. So that would be one thing. I think that people who want to own their own business or want to start a business, housing and the cost of living here is high. But I think that once you get into the market or once you get into Flagstaff, people manage to make it, you know, and over time they develop, they learn how to, you know, cut this cost, cut that cost, you know, do this, do that, and they survive. But it's not a real comfortable survival. For a lot of people, it's really pretty hard. So I think that anything that we do in terms of encouraging entrepreneurship will have to include somehow looking at how we might try and offset some of those issues that impact them negatively. And I'm not sure how to do that because we live in Arizona, and Arizona is the Wild Wild West. And the idea is that, you know, if you come out here to the Wild Wild West, if you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. And we still feel that way, you know, in Arizona, and which is kind of sad because really it does not help people who want to try and work up. So.
Thank you,
I
Ms.
see
Dick.
Miss Bernadine had her hand raised as well.
I just wanted to say, thank you first to Mayor Coral and Ms. Deb for mentioning those prairie dogs and for their comments that are right on time. But I wanted to ask if I think we're able to get some sound from Council Member Jamie Whelan. So I was going to, oh no, she's there. The screens are moving around. Ms. Whelan, can you say something and to see if we have some sound from you? Because I'm sure we'd like, I know we'd like to hear something from you. Nope. Oh, nope, we still can't. We still don't have sound, sorry. Oh. Okay, I'm back here trying to see what we can do, but it's not working. Thank you.
All right. Well, while we're working on that, we do thank you. And Mr. Aslan, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time and comment and having a listening ear, and because this is where it all starts with conversation. And you know, we're discussing, we kind of included two questions, you know, what do you feel needs to change, and then how can we bring about that change? And listening to the conversation, it seems like we've reached a conundrum. We're at a point where we know that change needs to happen, but the barriers and obstacles that are presenting themselves seem quite formidable. So I'd really like to hear from the panelists. I wanted to hear from Ms. Whelan, but if Ms. Finger, if you're still on the line, or Mr. Bonnell, you know, how do we navigate these waters of change when we really don't know the course to take? Where do we go from here as a community, especially people of color, as we're looking to get a better economic foothold here in the community and also help drive the economy as well?
What I have a question about is in terms of having a market for people of color. It seems like the largest Black population would be the student population, but I don't know. And I know that, you know, the fraternities involved with this coalition. So I'd like to hear, you know, maybe from Ricky or Justice, if they think that, because obviously, I mean, I think a basic thing of a business plan would be to figure out if you got somebody to sell stuff to. So I'm just curious about that. That's just a question. I don't have much beyond that to offer.
Good question. Ricky, Justice?
I would say, I think it's important to understand that, you know, as students in college, like, you know, I would say maybe around like September, October, like we start looking for, you know, housing for the following term or the following year, you know, due to, you know, limited space and stuff like that. But most of the time when we're looking, we feel comfortable just staying on campus because that might be our cheapest option, just because we maybe don't have 4 or 5 people to move into a house with. And most of the time, if I do see like any of my Black friends in a house, it's usually like deep in there, like they have a lot of people to split the rent just because it is so much. But the market is big. Like, although we might have a small percentage population on campus, which I think is what, 3% for those that are African Americans on campus.
That's
but
thousands.
I think the market is still big for everybody to get something that's affordable, because everybody's trying to move. Like, everybody wants to be in a house eventually. Like, well, maybe not everybody, but I would like to be in a house eventually, like while I'm going through school, but just not having to worry about, you know, costs and stuff like that, just making sure I can get by and just get my education.
And I also echo that sentiment, as well as, especially with a great emphasis on a potential co-op as well, especially if that co-op had some sort of e-commerce virtual aspect to it. Because one thing that college students are great at is spending money online. It's absolutely incredible. And so many students come in at you, especially students of color, and don't know what to do. Like, I remember when I came here and I was it took me a good few months before I found Jabbar over at Cuts. I was looking for hair products, couldn't find anything really. I didn't want anything over at Target. Yeah, people, the cut hair. I mean, there's just a slew of services that Black people can offer. I wanted some soul food. You know, I'm from the South. I wanted some soul food, and I never found it. Still have yet to find it.
Oh, there's a good soul food place by Cuts.
Oh, thank goodness. I know exactly what you're talking about. Anyway, I digress. But there's such a wide market. We just need to capitalize it, and we need to be smart about how we capitalize on that market.
I will also say, like, coming to NAU is obviously a culture shock, but I feel like it shouldn't be a strenuous, is that how you say it? Strenuous process to try to find strenuous process to find, like, you know, Black businesses. Like in Phoenix, I could look up, you know, Make-Hay and, you know, find product for my hair that's not gonna burn my hair or make my hair less, you know, thick than it is already. But
or find somebody who can braid.
You know, it's just hard. And like, we have a side hustle. Like, there's a bunch of Black students that have side hustles. They braid hair. They have so many different talents that they could be putting forth. But I just think it's an opportunity thing as well. Like, until the opportunity is presented to us, I guess we really won't know what the what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah. What the market's gonna look like, basically, until we have the opportunity that's presented to us.
But I also feel like a co-op, especially one that targets such a wide market, offers such a dynamic chance and opportunity to grow Black business in Flagstaff. Because what ends up happening is, say you have every, you know, Black representative of the Flagstaff community with a good or a service to offer. You know, if they chip in $20, you've got a decent amount of funding for grants. And then at that point, once you start making profit off of selling these products or these services through a hub, a consortium of these resources, then you can start to keep a little bit of the profit that belongs to the co-op itself. And that goes back into a business incubator for getting more Black businesses on the market in Flagstaff. I mean, it really is the sort of thing that you build an opportunity, or you take the opportunity that we have, you build it, and then that opportunity fuels more opportunities for generations of Black businesses here in Flagstaff, type thing.
Thank you, Justice. Thank you, Ricky. Really appreciate that, and want to put you back on the hot seat right quick, because you mentioned that so many of your friends there of color, Black students, have side hustles. So how do we take those side hustles and align them with the Murdoch Center and align them with the what's the market? With the market, how do we align those two so you start to transfer some of that money that's on campus into the actual community?
That's a good question. I'm a little stuck.
You know, I really think that you identify those specific needs, the needs of that demographic of students. So for example, I have friends who, Rick and I both have friends on campus who, like he said, braid hair, friends who do videography and film. If you can combine that and pair them with those resources, especially through the Murdoch Center, I believe that, yeah, exactly. Resources. Because if you reflect back on our last town hall, we spoke to the lack of knowledge, right? That's oftentimes prevalent in Flagstaff. But if Black students come to NAU and they know that the Murdoch Center is there, which many do not, and they know what the Murdoch Center has to offer there, then that's a natural bridge. And that begins to form over time. And it forms something absolutely beautiful. And that's a direct translation and a transfer of those resources, that talent, the resources, and those side hustles, and by extension, that money from campus back into the Flagstaff community.
I just feel like if the resources aren't presented to everybody, like if they don't know about the resources, they're gonna look at their business, their side hustle, as a fend for yourself kind of thing, and they're just gonna do whatever they can to get by for themselves until they know that there's actual resources. Because I'm sure people would love to go to the Murdoch Center to get their hair braided, like,
right.
Or if we had like a little workshop where you could actually, someone could come and teach, others how to braid hair or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to capitalize off of something.
And then a portion of the money goes back into these workshops, because you're getting that educational piece too, that just promotes more and more business. But what's to stop us from having a co-op with Black businesses, selling these services, getting that money back, and then hosting educational entrepreneurial trainings for youth of color and community members of color, specifically Black community members? I mean, that's invaluable there.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so very much, gentlemen. I'm looking at my clock, and I know my clock is slower than Miss Deb's. I don't know what the deal is with time here in Phoenix, but I have 5:48. I know Miss Deb probably has like 5:52 or something. So I want to turn it back over to Miss House, Miss Deb, and say thank you for this conversation. It's just the first of, again, a continuing it. And as we're learning each week, one conversation lends to the next and helps us to connect dots along the way. So Ricky, Justice, don't talk about it, be about it, lead that charge, find out how you can take those students at NAU that have talents and align them with the resources in the community, okay? Ms. House.
All right, well, thank you. I know we were trying really hard to get Ms. Whelan on and able to speak even if she could have called in, but unfortunately we're having some trouble. I do want to remind folks that if you had comments that you wanted to make or questions that came up and you'd like to share them with us outside of this conversation, you can always email them to us at flagstafflivedblack@gmail.com. We want to thank everyone who came and participated in our conversation today. I think it's very clear from everything that we talked about that we are on a path towards making meaningful changes and helping to guide this conversation as to what those changes look like, what opportunities exist already that people might not be aware of, and what opportunities might crop up as we move forward. And we just start doing some of the same sort of creative brainstorming to come up with different programs and different things that are going to be great assets to the city.